road leads.
Then hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both high and low, rich and poor together. Do you indeed speak righteousness? Do you judge uprightly, all ye sons and daughters of men? And do you judge as others judge? For as you judge, you shall be judged. And if you condemn, you are condemned. Pass on. But there is no return.
Yeah, boy! Welcome to Profession Confession, dogs! I'm your host, the relaxing and wild Gabe Noah. With me in spirit, not in body, is the Black John Wayne Gacy, the White Clown Killer, the Thriller, the Illa, Tevin Pittman. He was here for the live stream. I'm recording this at a separate time. But we are back with part 2 of the Professional Sexual Submissive. So for anyone who's not familiar with these terms, this is a BDSM episode. That's probably not going to help you. But, you know, in the shows where they have whips and chains and leather masks and the lady's really mean to the guy, that's what we're talking about. This is a dungeon that anyone could walk in off the street and do this. And what was interesting to me about this initially is more her submissive stuff, because you hear about professional doms a lot, but you don't hear about professional subs quite as often. And the fact that it was a commercial dungeon means that anyone could walk off the street and rough her up. You know, part of her job description was basically getting, whipped, slapped, punched, trampled, spit on, generally mentally fucked with. Sometimes some stuff with a dog, and she loved nearly every minute of it. So this is exactly the type of person that I really love talking to. This perverted shit just fills me up, you know, and I could talk about this shit all day. We do get to, she did some dom stuff at the end, so we also cover that stuff as well. We're live streaming as many of our episodes as we can now. So if you want to see the guests or ask them questions yourself, follow us on Facebook or YouTube, and you can be part of it live when they pop up. Come on, don't make me ask all the weird shit. You guys can do some too. If you have a suggestion for a guest, please let us know. We're always open to that. Another quick note for context. If I seem off this episode, it's because I was perma-tripped by some tainted gas station CBD, and I was just baked. So there's a couple things that I asked questions that we'd covered the week before that I had to edit out. So there might be a couple minorly wonky edits. And one last time, I just want to shout out our guest, the wonderfully masochistic Stephanie Parent. She's no longer working at the dungeon. She has taken her bruised ass and gone back to the East Coast, her home in Baltimore, and she's pursuing writing. And she's kicking ass. I mean, she's been published in places like Huffington Post, but she doesn't want you to read that one. But, you know, like she's doing really well trying to sell her first novel. And it's not easy to go from sex work money to writing money. So if you want to follow her on Twitter, it's at SC_parent. And you can find her Patreon through that. You can give a one-time donation. You can give a many-time, whatever you like. Just be a soldier in the war on shame. Support your local pervert. Support artistic perverts particularly. Be a good person. You're a voyeur, for Christ's sakes. You're listening to this show. You're a pervert. Let's help each other out. Enjoy the episode. What are the hack moves in a dungeon?
Well, I mean, a lot of guys don't really know how to use the equipment or don't even know how to spank properly. Like there are parts of the body that you spank
properly.
Well, no, really though, because there's all kinds of spots that if you're hitting, it can hurt you. Like if you hit up on the tailbone, that can really damage your bones. And then if you hit like the side of the hip, which a lot of guys like to do, it's very painful and can leave very deep bruises, and it's just not good. So some guys will do that on purpose because they're sadists and they're mean, but most of them, if they do that, it's because they don't really know what they're doing. So that's a big one. But then when you get to using the equipment, it's really like some of them don't know what the toys are at all. Like, for instance, you know what a riding crop is, right? Everybody knows what a riding crop is these days.
Commandant Lassard had in Police Academy.
Some people will try to use a riding crop, but they'll try to use it like a cane. So they take the part that's like the stick part, and they're trying to hit you with that part as if it's a cane. Right. And that's just that you cannot let somebody do that. I think I let somebody do that once or twice, even when I was really submissive and really masochistic and love pain. Like, you just cannot, because it could probably scar you permanently. It's not meant to be. It's very thick and heavy, and it's not meant to be used that way. So they'll do things like that. Trying to think if there's anything funnier that they would do.
No. This is great. Don't go that way because I'm being quiet. I'm listening.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, just not knowing what's gonna, like if you have a really stingy whip with like very long, thin strands, then you might hit somebody with it not very hard. But if you hit them in a certain spots, like across the ribs, this would happen. And those thin strands kind of pull across the ribs, almost like claws, then it could just leave these really scary looking welts and really hurt. And that's not as big a deal because it does fade quickly, but it's kind of scary when it happens. Like, I remember once I was doing a session with a guy and it was fine. It was like a role play. I think it was like a home invasion rape type scene, but he was just like pretending to attack me. And then he grabbed that plugger and he like whipped it across my front side, like right below my boobs. I don't even know what he was aiming at, but I just screamed and like cried mercy in my space safe word, which I never do. Like, and it was just instinctive. I was just like, mercy. But then like 2 seconds later, I was like, why did I say that? I totally overreacted. But then he was saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then I looked down and there were just these huge, scary looking welts all along my ribs. And it looked really bad, but it went away. It went away in a day. It was just a surface reaction of the skin that happened. But he certainly did not, like, he wasn't even hitting me that hard. He didn't think that was going to happen. So that's an example of somebody not knowing how to use the toys, right?
Why am I so turned on by that?
It is. I mean, it is. I was a little turned on by it too. There? Yeah, I mean, it can be. I don't know. The human brain is mysterious.
I had a sketch idea. Tell me if you think this is funny, because it's a real sketch idea. It is a dom, and tell me if you think it's realistic in today's culture. Okay. That a dom gets sued for sexual harassment. He told me I was lower than a slave or whatever. Like,
you're gonna have to give me more details to know if it's realistic or not.
Well, I'm talking purely about the psychological stuff. If we're actually going to indulge this, let's absolutely do that. If you're for psychological abuse, he was that man in the leather said that I should eat garbage or whatever.
Actually, I'm going to say, well, I don't think you could sue somebody for it, but I definitely think it could happen. It could totally happen. Like it can become psychological abuse, but I don't think you could sue somebody for it. But yeah, I think that you should try that joke.
I like it. Defamation of character. Yeah. And I just did it on the show there. So we'll see. On the show. Let's see. Does it ever get, did you ever ask to be not paired with someone? Or like how frequently?
all the time. That happens all the time. So we're allowed to, to turn down a session for any reason. And sometimes it's really simple. Actually, I was talking with one of my friends and telling her that I was doing this podcast, and she was saying, like, we were pretty tame sometimes. I remember one time a guy came in and he wanted to do nipple torture, and literally nobody who was on the staff that day would do nipple torture. They were just like, all this, like, nope, I don't want anybody touching my nipples. So he had to leave because nobody would see him. So yeah, anybody could say no, but you, especially when you're starting, you want to have clients. So if you say no to everybody, then there's really no point to you working there. And you kind of have to see people maybe 2 or 3 times before because another thing a lot of guys will do is they'll be really nice to you like the first time that they play with you, and they'll be really respectful and not try to break any rules or hit you very hard. And then the second time, they'll start to push boundaries a little bit. And then the third time, it will be even more. The other thing they'll do, which I think is really kind of shitty, is so we would have to do something called where we could extend a session. So a lot of guys would start with just a half-hour session because, you know, what if it's not going well and neither party wants to continue? But then as soon as the session ends, you could say, okay, let's play for another 15 minutes. Let's play for another 30 minutes. So the guy would come up and he would be super polite and respectful for those first 30 minutes and then say, do you want to extend? And you would say, yeah, okay. So, and then as soon as the extension started, he would start like grabbing your pussy or hitting you really hard or just whatever thing that he knew. Yeah. Yeah. So just whatever. And then, you know, you'd already started the extra time. So you weren't going to be just like, nope, stopping the session. But actually we were not only were we allowed to not see someone, but we were allowed to completely stop the session in the middle of the session. Like that was supposed to be a last resort. I never did it. I don't think I even knew anybody who did it. But if a guy kept breaking the rules or breaking your boundaries or something was wrong and unsafe and you asked him to stop and he didn't stop 2 or 3 times, then you could just call the session and he would not get his money back.
Would you have to, so you talked about boundaries there. When they came in, did you have to like present and say, hi, I'm Stephanie Parent.
So we didn't even,
we probably should have talked about my vagina stepped
we
on.
probably should have talked about this like in the first episode because I didn't think about that. We didn't really explain like how no, that's okay. But we didn't really explain like how the process works. So there's always an interview. So there's an interview room downstairs. So before you agree to do a session, even if it was set up ahead of time, you just always talk over with the person. And especially if they're new, we do go over the rules with them. The problem is that we actually have a lot of rules. So we really don't go over them all because some of them are things that hardly ever come up. And we don't want to have, you know, a 15-minute interview that's just like a downer. But for example, one of the rules would be we don't do breath play. We don't do choking. But I would never have said that to a client unless they specifically asked for that. So, but what happened was because I never said that, because like, you know, I wouldn't say it unless somebody said, I want to choke you, and nobody ever said that. But one guy I did play with one time, he just said like, I want to dominate you. Actually, he was into psychological humiliation. He was like, I just want to have a really intense session. And then we got up into the room and the first thing he did as soon as the session started was he grabbed me by the throat and started choking me. Like so hard that I couldn't even talk to tell him that wasn't allowed, and also that I don't like it. So that was really scary. I was just going to ask you if
it turned you on. So it's not because
it did. So it did not, because I don't know why. I think for one thing, this whole session it might have turned me on with somebody else because I am turned on by the idea of breath play and being choked, but I'm not actually turned on by doing it. I'm not sure why. I think I just don't like the feeling of holding my breath or not being able to breathe. But with this guy, this was just a bad session. Nothing about this session turned me on. This was another example of a client who did not know what he was doing. I think he'd never done it before, but he was a really big, strong guy. So it was kind of scary because he also wanted to slap my face a lot, which is fine. I said that was fine. I liked doing that at the time, but he didn't know how to do that either. And he kept hitting my ear. And that's really dangerous. You can actually damage somebody's eardrum. And so he was hit my ear like hard enough that it was ringing like 2 or 3 times. And then I had to say, nope, don't do that anymore. No more hitting my face. So that whole session was he would start do something and I would say, don't do that anymore. That was how the whole session went because he just did not know what he was doing. And it was kind of scary. So
how do people know how hard to spank and slap? Like
they don't.
Okay.
And the funny thing is that some people think they're really hard and they're not. Mm-hmm. And then some people it's the opposite.
Are there ever people though who I just assume the maximum slap I can do and just, you know, where they fucking belt you?
Yeah, all the time.
Really?
And I mean, when I was a really heavy submissive, like that's what they call it. It doesn't mean fat. People used to think,
that was my next question.
Yeah, I used to say that sometimes when people were like, "Wait, you were heavy? You were fat?" No, it means that you can take heavy. And by the way, I'm totally fat positive. I don't mean that in a bad way, but yeah. And there were heavier girls at the dungeon too, but it just means that you could take heavy toys and you're a heavy player, like you could take a lot of pain. So when I was a really heavy submissive, like somebody could hit me with their hand as hard as they could, and it really wouldn't feel like a lot to me, no matter how hard they were hitting, because I was used to being hit with like the wood paddles really hard or the chains really hard, which is so much more. More. But then when I got lighter.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, is there a time that stands out as like the hardest you've been hit? Like, have you been like closed fist punched during one of these?
Well, it wasn't the hardest I got hit, but I did let one person punch me, and that was really stupid. I should not have done that. If there's anybody who's submissive, any submissive woman listening to this podcast, do not let anybody do that to you. But I let this guy punch me in the stomach because that was what he wanted to do. So I don't think I hope he wasn't punching me as hard as he could, but it felt pretty hard. So he punched me in the stomach a bunch of times. That was the only time that I was ever punched.
Did that turn you on?
No, that didn't turn me on either. Some things about his session turned me on, but not that in particular.
What's the most, what is the most, damn it, what was I going to say? Fuck. I lost it.
Oh, no.
I'll get it back.
The most damaging like to my body, or
no, what thing that turned you on most surprised you?
That most surprised me.
Yeah, was there ever anything where you go like, oh, I'm not going to be turned on by getting slapped in the face? Oh, and then
well, I was turned on by being slapped in the face. Right. I love being slapped in the face. But you know what? Actually, this is kind of a boring answer, but I would say spanking, because before I started working at the dungeon, I did not think I was into spanking, because I associated spanking with like being a little kid and being punished. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I had to actually never been spanked. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of my fantasies were more about being like tied up and whipped. Like, have you ever seen this old movie called Belle de Jour? It's a French movie.
No, I've not.
No, you should watch it. It's a surreal film. Mm-hmm. And it has a lot of BDSM in it, but it's really good. It has these scenes of the women getting whipped. So stuff like that was what I would imagine, or stuff like real, more kind of quote unquote real stuff, but like adult stuff. So for me, in my head, spanking was something that I thought was like for kids or for punishment. I just thought it sounded silly. But then as soon as I got to the dungeon and the client started doing it to me, I got it, because it's such a power dynamic, especially because a lot of times you're lying over the person being spanked is lying over the lap of the person who's spanking them. So you can't even see who's spanking you. So you can almost kind of imagine it's anybody. And it's just a very vulnerable position to be in. And it feels like mean, but kind at the same time, especially because a lot of times people will spank you and then they'll kind of rub your butt, like soothe away the pain, and then they'll spank you some more. So it's just this weird combination of like punishing somebody and taking care of them. And there's something really erotic about it that I had no idea before I had experienced that. So that would be the thing.
So your first spank, do you remember your first spank, like what it was with? And
I do remember the first time I was spanked, but that was not that erotic, because it was a session with another, it was like a double session.
So it was shuttlecock, whatever. Fucking animal. I lost it. God damn it.
It was me and another woman who worked at the dungeon at the time, and a guy. And it should have been a really fun session, but I was just so nervous. Like, I felt like I didn't belong there. I felt like I was going to get laughed at. And the other woman in the session, she was just so beautiful and so confident. She was a switch. I was just too nervous to enjoy anything about that session. But I do remember getting spanked. And I remember like the male client, he had us do, this is a pretty common thing, like he would have us compete with each other, like just fun, silly games. And then like the loser would get spanked. So he had things like we had to see who could stand on one leg the longest or stuff like that. And I remember I was so nervous. I was so nervous that I literally could not stand on one leg for more than, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds, because I was just shaking.
What was it?
And then
sorry, go ahead if you have more.
Oh, and then I was just to say, and then he asked the other woman to tickle me, but he didn't tell me that. Like, he whispered in her ear to do something, and then she started tickling me. But she was not that great at tickling, and I'm not that ticklish. So I couldn't figure out what she was doing. I thought she was just like touching me. And then she was like running her fingers over my back. And I was like, I was so nervous. I didn't know how to react. I didn't know what to do. So I started making these like little moans, like it felt good. And finally she had to whisper in her ear. She was like, I'm tickling you. You have to laugh. It's just like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. That was a hard session for me.
It sounds like
very
like a fucking acting retreat or something like that. Like
there was a lot of acting in this job in various ways.
Right. Is it something that you had a knack for, the acting, do you feel like, or you can only do it when it's genuine to you?
No, I could do it. I mean, and sometimes the client knew, like we did role plays. So they would ask you to play the part. And some of these guys were really into that. Like some of them, I think probably were actors, or that was the part that they got off on some people would come up with just really zany scenes. And it was kind of all about how wacky you could get and the things that you were saying. So that was fun.
Hag.
Did you have to say? I didn't know what you said.
That was just acting voice, just doing it. Oh, you hag! I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is. Oh, and then, what is the thing that people most get kicked out for? Like, is it biters or what's the really?
I would say probably trying to take photos. I've known a couple people who got kicked out for like secretly videotaping or taking photos during the session.
Okay.
Because that was.
Oh, that's some
very strictly
shit.
prohibited.
Yeah.
There were definitely clients who would cross boundaries by, pulling your underwear off and grabbing your pussy or whatever, or just things like that. And I would like to say that they got kicked out, but more often they would kind of get warned and the behavior would kind of get pushed under the rug. And they tended to be the clients who would see new submissives, new girls. And then after a couple of times of seeing them, you would get so tired of it that you wouldn't see them anymore, but there was always a new girl for them to see. So they did not really get kicked out for that. It was just something you kind of had to deal with by figuring out how to deflect it, by, using your safe word or moving away from them or suggesting doing something different or whatever it might be.
Suggesting doing something different. I can think of that. That's like trying to have sex with a girlfriend from behind, and then she goes, "Hey, why don't we try it on your back?"
Say that you're over some guy's lap and he keeps like kind of like humping you, where you don't want to be humped. Then you could say, "Well, let's get. I'm getting sore of being spanked in this position. Why don't we stand up and go over to the cross, and I'll lean against the cross, and you can spank me there, because then he can't hump in the same way." So just a lot of like shifting positions.
Yeah.
Happened, like moving around the room and then being like, okay, let's try something new.
Let's take a nap for 5 minutes, okay?
Well, that could happen too. I mean, some of the clients were really into cuddling. That's another thing that like I hadn't mentioned yet, is that a lot of the men who came to the dungeon might not have even been that into BDSM, but it was really more about intimacy and wanting that connection and that intimacy. So sometimes they might come in wanting to spank you, but if they weren't very good at it, or they were doing it wrong and they were going to hurt you, you might be able to just say like, do you want to just cuddle for a minute? And they might say, okay. That might end up being the session. You never knew.
Would they ever cuddle in their dom shit? Like, like wear a full whatever, the cross, things like that, and go, I just really came here to cuddle.
They would probably just be wearing their underwear at that point.
Would they still be considered doms?
I mean, I would say the ones the clients who were the most serious about being dominant probably were the ones who did not take off any clothes at all. And there were quite a few of those.
Yeah. Well, hey, I get that, man. I'm the dominant one. I'm going to take my fucking shirt off. You get naked.
Yep. That was exactly it.
Yeah. What is the most cringe thing that you ever heard when a dom trying to talk, or worse thing, cringe, whatever. I'm a listicle, I guess, from the 90s. Cringe.
I need to think about this because there's so much.
You have some time. Hang on one second. Tevin, the monitor in here shut off. if you don't mind. I don't know what's happening.
Can you still hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can. It's
okay.
Totally fine.
Well, because, I mean, one thing a lot of guys would try to do dirty talk, which was really, they would say things like, you know, like, my little slut, show me what a little slut you are, and stuff like that. Or,
my little slut.
Else?
It's a fucking Christmas present. My little slut.
What else? Like there was one guy who wanted us to feed him grapes. That was not fun. And the worst part though was that we had to buy the grapes because he would plan his sessions ahead of time and send us this long list of requirements for the session. And he would say, I'm in charge this week. Grapes. Yeah. So he would ask us to bring grapes. And he was like one of the role play guys. So he had these very elaborate sessions. Like he wanted to pretend it was like ancient Greece and Rome. And he was, you know, a Roman emperor or something, which is, I guess, where the grapes came from. But he liked to do a lot of costume changes. So he would say, you know, I want you to wear a Roman toga and you're going to be my Roman slave. But I also want you to wear a high heels and garter because he just liked those. So he would combine. So it made no sense.
Yeah. So and then he wasn't really being a dom. He was just bossy. He just wanted to come in and be bossy
and probably a theater major too. He was one of those.
Yeah, exactly. He's using you to be his theater troupe, basically.
Yeah. So, and another word like another of the cringe to go along with the slut things is the master slaves thing. So there were a lot of like the grape person, the person who wanted to feed you grape, you to feed him grapes. He would, you know, he wanted you to call him master. He wanted you to say, oh, master, I'm so turned on by being your slave. I'm getting so wet just feeding you grapes and serving you and all this.
Is that how you say it?
What?
Is that how you would say it? Like, is that an exact delivery?
No.
Can you do that?
I can try. Let's see. I would say,
I'd like to see how numb I am.
Oh, master. Oh, I wish that we could do so many dirty things right now. Oh, I wish we didn't have these silly rules and that you weren't the king and I wasn't the lowly servant who doesn't deserve your attention. Something like that.
That's very good. That really, hang on. Let me see if there's any effect. There's movement. Is there ever any appropriation, like problems with racial shit, like, or just the word slave? Oh, yeah,
definitely. That's
you have a black
question.
Slave come in, you're dumbing,
yes.
and you don't want to call him that.
Yeah. Well, wait, I'm not sure how you're asking. Like, was there racism at the dungeon? Is that what you're asking?
No. Or he's hiring that. He wants that service. He's a sub. Yes. And then you're a white dom. The black guy walks in like, all right, let's do it. And then you're like, oh man, I'm not comfortable calling him.
Not that. I never experienced that, but the opposite was a problem. Definitely Black women who worked at the dungeon, it was tough for them in a lot of ways. And the owner was really sensitive to that and really tried to help with that. But it was like, there were a lot of clients who would come in and want to do like master slave plantation stuff, which was
that takes some confidence. Just the idea of calling that place a business and going, yeah, I didn't see it in your ad, but do you guys do dog fucking? That would be so. It's just crazy that those people have the confidence to roll out there with that shit. I really got to salute.
There within the dungeon, there was a client who came, and he was kind of a talker, but he mostly just talked, but he had been in the BDSM scene for a really long time, and he would tell some really disturbing stories about, like, I don't know, doms, and he made it sound like this had actually happened to him. I don't know if it had or not, but like doms who would make their male slaves have sex with animals, stuff like that. So he would talk about
in the dungeon, so he just talk about that.
He just talked about it, but he implied that it had happened to him in the past.
Wolf tickets.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and actually it's coming back to me now. I think I had kind of blocked this out because I did not session with him a lot, but I sessioned with him once, and he would just come up with, like, we would just sit there basically, and like the only thing he did was nipple torture. So we would just sit there and he would like squeeze my nipples, and then once I was a switch, I would squeeze his nipples. We would just talk about things. So I remember he was having a scenario once where he said, imagine you're my slave and I also have a dog and you two are on the same level. And then one day I realized what should happen with you and the dog. So we just talked through this whole scenario of me fucking the dog, which is really disturbing. And I had not thought about that in years.
What are some details that you said during that? Do you mind painting the picture a little bit of what that would go like? Like, I mean, because
I didn't
you're
like
doing
act it out.
You've never done it before, right? So you were making it up on the spot. Oh, like, how did that go?
I mean, I'm trying to remember because I don't remember that well. I think it was
Your
just
dog
like
walks into the yard.
I mean, I didn't talk. I think he just talked. I think he was just like, the dog is bigger than you. What kind of dog is it? I think he asked me what kind of dog I would.
The dog is bigger than you. That is a fucking dopest fucking sex line I've ever heard.
Say that. I don't know, but I remember now that he asked me what kind of dog I would want to fuck. I think I said a husky.
Well, so, it'd be like hugging a teddy bear with a boner, right? I mean, that would be nice. Yeah. Can I guess mine?
Sure.
I got to think about it for a second, but hold on. So if I had to have sex with a dog, he let you pick the dog you have sex with. Well, I'm new to this, so I'd probably say a Chihuahua.
That's probably a smart answer.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And then again, though, you can say, if you're getting a bad feeling before the session starts, you can say, turn down the session.
That would
happen.
Did anyone ever say something, though, that in a way shook you or stuck with you afterward? Just something, like what?
I'm trying to think. Well, like some guys would say mean things about your appearance, and you never even knew if it was like,
if you don't mind,
true.
Oh God, yeah, what a mind fuck that is.
Yeah.
What's an example?
You never even knew like whether like that my nose was too big. I remember one guy saying it. That.
And by the way, your nose is too big.
Yeah.
Your dick nose, broad. Yeah.
And
I'm looking at your picture.
You never knew if they really meant it or if they were just trying to fuck with your head to upset you. There was one guy who was mad that my butt was too small. And I think because he had seen me once before and I'd lost a little weight. And he was like, your butt's smaller, your butt's smaller. He was pretty upset about that.
Do you know, this is just a little trivia. We were talking about noses. Do you know why a nose, like the human nose, cannot be longer than 11 inches?
Why?
Because then it'd be a foot. My 5-year-old son told me that joke this morning. I mean, I sexed it up. He just said the 12-inch. God damn, we're a team. Shout out to my son, Doc. God, I don't know, Tevin. I can't tell if I'm just stoned or am I in God mode.
You said what?
I said, am I stoned or am I in God mode?
You're definitely stoned.
Really? Okay. Let's see. What? Oh yeah, talking about your doming. That was the thing. You also did some doming, but you had to graduate to that kind of.
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody at the dungeon had to start as a submissive unless you'd already trained somewhere else. But a lot of people came in wanting to be dom, so they would start learning how to dom pretty quickly. But I was kind of the opposite. When I came in, I thought I would never dom. Like, I never wanted to do it. And I did end up staying submissive for 3 years, which was really unheard of at the time. Like, most people became a switch within a year or so. But after being there for 3 years, I didn't have as many clients because a lot of the clients who saw submissives wanted to kind of switch it up and see new girls. They would get bored with you. So I didn't have as many clients, and I knew I would get a lot more if I started switching, because you can see twice as many people, obviously, if you can see both sides. And also, like, even if you are going to continue to do submissive, what did you say?
Do you ever do both for the same client?
Yes. That's actually
fucking
very,
hilarious.
very common. No, it's not. I mean, I know we talked about this last.
Wait, are you being the dom now, or are you being submissive? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I think we talked about this before because you said that didn't make sense to you, and it doesn't make sense to me either.
We
like,
talked
just
about
instinctively,
switching.
like, you have to be one or the
sense.
other, right? But no, a lot of people really want to switch. Like, that's what they want to do, and they want to come in and do a switch session. So that happens quite often. But the thing is that even if you're doing a session where you're submissive the whole time, they kind of treat you differently once you become a switch. Like, once they know that you know how to do the other side, like, they're not going to try to push those boundaries as much.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that you know if they're hitting you in the wrong places, and you're going to say something, so they're not going to do that, you know? So you get like a little more respect if you're a switch. So after 3 years, I was like, I need that if I'm going to keep working here. So
what hurts more, getting hit in the tits or the pussy?
Oh, that's a really hard
question.
Answer it honestly. It depends how hard. I guess I would say pussy.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think it feels like balls?
I mean, I don't know because I don't have them. Probably.
I wasn't sure. You know, I hate to assume anything these days, but yeah, that's I'm in God mode. Let's see okay, yeah, you doming. I'm sorry. There was something that you brought up once, and it was a wax type thing.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that was my letter to you. So well, wax play was a pretty common request, like dripping black wax on somebody. But there was one client who really liked candle wax, and he had kind of an impressive talent that you could drip candle wax over his entire cock, like cover it, and then you weren't touching him. He was not touching himself. Nothing was going on, and then he could actually orgasm just from that. And like orgasm through a little hole in the wax.
He's a mentalist. He's a sexual mentalist.
Yeah. So that was kind of amazing.
I don't know how he found out he could do that.
Well, I tried to do that for years.
Like that's what I like.
And I'm dead serious. I actually developed a thing that I called the cricket, where you'd lay on your back and kind of rub your knees together, but you get your penis between your thighs and you kind of knead it between there.
I think a lot of men at the dungeon also perfected that method.
Yes.
Because it wasn't technically, you know, they weren't supposed to be nude and they weren't supposed to be doing that. So
but that guy basically did it truly just standing, letting it hang in air, using his mind, push the sperm from his testicles out the end of his penis.
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Did you ever see him do it?
Yeah. I played with him a lot.
Would he how would he react after he achieved it? Like, was he like a weightlifter, like a Russian weightlifter, like
No, he would just act like, you know, it was funny because I mean, that was not supposed to happen, but you know, sometimes it did happen because people and its biological reaction.
Yes,
but if that did happen,
coming in pants.
If that did happen, like as soon as it had happened and it was over, the guy would kind of act like nothing had happened, and like the session was over and everything would just turn more casual suddenly. Like all of a sudden they would grab their clothes, put their clothes on. It was like they were on the street, passing you on the street. It was like the whole hour had not happened. Right. So that was something that would happen a lot, like back to business.
Yeah. This is a question from earlier, and this is going to go around to everyone. Tevin, how many times lifetime come in your pants?
To be honest with you, I don't think I've ever
Tevin
done it before.
Not to this audience, dude.
No, I don't think, honestly,
you really don't
nothing that stands out is like an embarrassing. No.
How many wet dreams? That's not your pants, but
I don't know. I guess I don't.
I put you on 12.
Like, yeah, I don't know. Okay. Like, right, I don't know how many times. I don't count them. You count your
Stephanie. I have come in my pants. It was my move for the longest time. I mean, I'm dead serious. 35 times. 35 times. I mean, yeah. And that's just doing the cricket. No, and then Stephanie, how many times at your job while you're doing this did you ever get overcome and come while it's going on, or how frequently?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm kind of odd in that, like, I can have like kind of small orgasms and not really have a like physical, like not
good band name,
like nobody would know. that it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that happened like a lot, like probably considering that I worked there 6 years, probably, I don't know. I want to say like over 100 times.
Oh, wow.
Probably. Yeah. Because I'll have like little like mini orgasms.
Do you do mini squirts?
No, I don't squirt or anything like that. So like I said, like nobody would know.
Do you feel like squirters should have to disclose that they're squirters before you have sex with them? Tevin, do you too?
No, I don't think so. Because
Really?
I think most guys love it and they'd want it to be a surprise.
Kind of like getting the squirt from the flower lapel in the eye. Like, oh, that was so fun. I love that. Thanks for not asking.
Well, not in the eye, but
right. Well, if you're down there, if you eat it like I do.
Okay. Well, maybe in that situation they should disclose.
Thanksgiving dinner. Did we finish with the wax thing? I know I've been all over the place.
Yeah.
And you have my official profession.
That was that story. I don't think that there were lots of people who wanted to use wax, but actually I do have another crazy wax thing, which is that once I became a dom, so there was one guy who came in and he was not even like, he was a masochist, but he was not submissive. He was an example of one of those people who topped from the bottom. Like he was just came in and he said, this is exactly what I want you to do to me.
Push me around.
Do it in this order.
Push me on the floor.
Yeah, but what he wanted, and I can't believe that he wanted this. Like, I don't know how you could, but he wanted me to drip hot wax in his asshole. Yeah.
I just did not guess that you'd say that. I was trying to think of what you were going to say as you're saying it. Wouldn't have guessed it. Not just, I don't know why.
I can't imagine. I would never, I don't know that I could. I would be so terrified to let somebody do that to me, but that's what this guy wanted, and he took it like a champ. So it was very impressive. We did it for a long time.
What's the most repetitive torture that you ever did?
Gosh, there's actually a lot of these sessions get very repetitive because there will be somebody, I think there was, as for me receiving it, I would say like nipple torture, because there was at least one, maybe more guys who just wanted to like pinch your nipples, and you would think, okay, that doesn't hurt that much, but if that's all they're doing for a half hour, oh boy, does that start to hurt like a lot.
I probably asked you this last week, but are there guys who come in just to suck titty?
Well, they're not allowed to. You're not allowed to do that because like there's supposed to be no exchange of bodily fluids, so no mouth stuff.
Well, my lips are just skin too. I'll dry my mouth out.
But there were definitely guys who would just like go in and do it without asking, and then you would have to tell them to stop, but they would just like jump in and bite your nipple.
Were there ever illicit things like that though, where you kind of keep that going with the client because you know he's going to tip you another $50?
No, because usually the guys, because usually the guys who did that were like the types of guys who didn't tip anyway, or who tipped a very small amount and it wasn't going to make a difference.
Right.
I'm trying to think like that. No, I'm trying to think if there's any type that like I would have bent a rule a little bit. It would have been more like because I liked the client. So like there was one client who was really sweet and young. And what he would do is he would put duct tape over my mouth and then he would kiss me. So we weren't technically breaking the rules.
That's like a bad hostage movie.
Yeah.
In a way,
so
right?
He was really into like the old detective, like noir stuff.
The Maltese Falcon or whatever. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And I'm into that too. So it was a connection. So that was fun.
I'm a big Humphrey Bogart fan. Did we ask just your just weirdest like request or regular, anything like that?
I don't know about a regular one. I was gonna say the one who wanted that, the wax in the asshole. That was pretty weird. And the other thing that he wanted was, we have something called a Wartenberg Pinwheel. Do you happen to know what that is?
Yeah, that's my main sex move. The Wartenberg Pinwheel.
It's it's actually like a medical tool that was used to test people's reactions, but it's basically just a small like round pinwheel, but it's like metal spikes, and you can roll it over somebody's skin and it doesn't really hurt. Right. It's just kind of a funny sensation. But guess what part of his body he wanted that on?
Well, I mean, penis or shaft? I'm gonna say shaft.
Yeah, it was on top of the wax, and then that would break up the wax by using that so that we could get in deeper.
So he'd put his balls in the wax and then want the wax shattered off his sack.
Yep.
Get me out of this thing.
That was a weird one. Another one that was not a regular or anything, but that was just kind of funny. This was around the time of the horrible 2016 elections. There was somebody who wanted to, he was a Democrat. I'm trying to remember if he wanted to be, he was pretending to be Trump. And then he wanted you to pretend
Alex
to be
Baldwin?
Hillary Clinton.
Oh.
And you were going to like beat him up and show Trump his place. And Hillary Clinton won in this scenario.
That's fucking awesome.
I know. That was a good one. Yes.
Let's see. I don't know. How about this? What is the thing that a client would say that would make you roll your eyes? Like the hack moves, the cliche shit that you just go, come on, we're not going to fucking you're not my daddy again. Or I don't know. Was there ever something that you really?
I mean, the daddy one was pretty like common. I mean, I guess if any guy came in and said, I want to do a schoolgirl scene where you're a naughty schoolgirl and I catch you and I'm the principal and I'm going to punish you. I was like, oh, come on. And there was one client who would actually do that he would do the exact same scene. And he came every single week, and he'd been coming to the dungeon for like literally 20 years. And he had it had to be exactly the same every time. It was always that you were the student and that you got caught smoking. And he was a principal. And so you had to come to his office, and he was going to strip search you for the cigarette. And he would so we had peppermints that we kept in the lobby, like peppermint candy. So he would have you hide peppermints in like your bra and your panties and everywhere. And the peppermints were supposed to be the cigarettes. So he would search you and find the peppermints. And then he would punish you for smoking. So literally, I probably did the session 200 times.
You actually just described my
exactly, yes.
Grandpa Elvin's probably his dying fantasy. That is like he stormed the beach at Normandy. He's World War II generation. Like that is the northern white man sexual thing, right? You got a peppermint candy in there. You got some candy in your bra with your boobie.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, were there ever people that just made you sick just with their, there's always people like, okay, this is what I think comedy and BDSM are actually mirror counterparts, because I believe the worst part about stand-up comedy is the cliches about it because of the shitty comics.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that way about BDSM? Like, what are the things it gets a bad rap for?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's different now because of 50 Shades, because I think that's mostly what it gets a bad rap for. So it's probably different before 50 Shades, but I think, well, actually, I think there's a sense nowadays, and I'm saying this from trying to like trying to publish a memoir and now a novel. So I think because of 50 Shades, there's this idea that BDSM is actually conservative in a way, which I know is really weird to say, but like because it was BDSM was like a very rich white man and a very heterosexual white man and a very heterosexual, very stereotypically weak, not feminist white girl who end up getting together.
Deeply
and that was like the story of 50 Shades. So so I think some people kind of think of BDSM that way, that it's like this weird fairy tale of the rich billionaire guy. So that's one misconception for sure. However, I think also,
sorry, let me cut in really quick on that. Do you ever, because you were saying that it's a white male dominated type thing like that. Yeah. Is there ever a dom that you've seen that's like a fat Mexican guy in a Taz t-shirt?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, dressed down, like truly, like big Taz t-shirt and Zubas.
We had people of all different ethnicities come to the dungeon, and in fact,
and it wasn't about the ethnicity; it was about really the clothing and the approach. That it's like clean. Yeah, clean cut rich guy.
There were definitely guys in silly t-shirts or whatever, and who didn't care how they looked at all, like old band t-shirt or even like a comic book t-shirt. Tabasco, I don't know anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I like Taz. That's my favorite one to think of.
But the other misconception would definitely be like abuse. the abuse is a big misconception about BDSM. That's a pretty dangerous one, because it's not BDSM. Good BDSM is not abuse. But then the other side kind of gets, and I think you talked about this in the episode that you did with the cam girl. Like, there's this whole thing where it's like, oh, it has to be so safe, sane, and consensual. Like, people put such an emphasis on that, which is a good thing. But then there's also like the risk aware kink, which I think is more people who
That's
are
the hottest part.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Yeah, me too. So like, I think if I'm in the dungeon, yes, you always want to be safe, sane, and consensual. But like,
right,
with my boyfriend, not my boyfriend now, but with my boyfriend at the time, like, it was much more about like the risk aware type thing, and that like I didn't always want to have a safe word with him. I really wanted to feel like I was not in control. I wanted him to make me do things that I did not want to do. And some people would say, well, that's not good. That's not BDSM. But for me, it was. But so there's like a lot of lines there, and then, but anytime it crosses over into downright abuse, then that is not BDSM anymore. So that's a misconception for sure.
How do you know what abuse is, or how does a dom know? Like, for instance,
I mean, it's tricky. That there's one thing they say is that you should never dom when you're angry.
Don't dom angry.
Yeah,
that's so fucking funny. God damn, that's awesome. Don't dom angry, Rick. I don't think you should go in there. Why? Huh, that's crazy. Because, I mean, have you heard incidents about that?
Well, I mean, I think that like I didn't have the healthiest relationship with my ex-boyfriend, and he did dom angry sometimes, and it was probably not a good idea. But yeah, I mean, because if somebody's angry and because I guess the idea is that when you're dominating somebody, like, even if you're punishing them for something, it should be done in a very rational, level-headed way, like not in an emotional way. And if you are strongly emotional when you're doming, it should be a more positive emotion. Like,
you should be smiling. Like you're the dom.
Well, even if it's like a passionate, like maybe a passion, and like knowing that the sub is enjoying it too on some level.
What about crying as a sub?
Crying?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of guys would love it if you cry. Like, that was actually, there were a couple guys who came in who were like, I want a sub who can cry. And I mean, some people, like, I can't just make myself cry. So like, there was this guy would specifically say, can you make yourself cry? I would have to be like, nope, I cannot do that. I did cry in session a couple times, but that's one place where I didn't necessarily want to lose control. So those were usually like bad sessions where I let things go too far. But in general, like, it's not, especially if you're playing on your own, like not for work, I think crying as a sub can be amazing, like a really good emotional release. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Did you use your boyfriend as like your testing ground for your jet, essentially then?
You mean when I was a sub or when I was a dom?
When you were, I mean, either one, I guess. But I mean,
well, I never dommed him. I would never have dommed him. Like, he was super dominant. So no, I did not in that way. I'm trying to think. Like, if I liked something at the dungeon, I would definitely ask him to do it. So in that way, yes. And obviously we could do all this stuff that you're not allowed to do at the dungeon.
Right. What's an example of I mean, does that become a thing as a submissive, your own pain tolerance and like figuring out how far you can go? And I'd imagine part of that is you have to crash yourself into very uncomfortable spots if you really want to get the good nut.
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely I could go further with my boyfriend, because then we would have like usually sex, but even if not sex, we would have aftercare. So you don't always get that at the dungeon. But like just being able to spend the night with him and sleep beside him and cuddle and feel safe and all that. And you don't get that in a session at the dungeon when the client just walks out. Like, if you really need it, and you can ask for it from one of the other women there, can like hug you for a couple minutes, but it's not going to be the same.
Did you know your boyfriend before you started working at the dungeon?
No, actually, I met him because of the dungeon. He wasn't a client or anything, but he he was like a dominant, and I was talking to another girl who was a submissive, and she knew him, and I played with him a couple of times, and she was like, oh yeah, I told him about you, and I told him that you work at this dungeon and he wants to meet you. So I met him. And then the funniest thing was that he only lived a couple blocks from the dungeon. Like he'd never been there, but he knew about it. So he lived so close that sometimes I would go to his apartment like right after work. So it was just felt like kind of like fate. It was weird.
Did he still go see other submissives while dating you?
Well, he never went to the dungeon, so he wouldn't like pay or anything.
He had
But
the dungeon
no,
at home.
yeah,
He
but
lived at
yes,
the
we were
motherfucking
in like, for a while we weren't even in a relationship. We were just like play partners. So he was seeing lots of other submissives, and we are always having threesomes and stuff. And then we had kind of like a half open relationship. Like he would see other girls and I did not see other guys. And
that sounds like most open relationships I know of.
Yeah, it was probably not very, actually, I can't believe that I'm going to tell you this now, but I should have put this on my like notes to you. So I have a very weird, we talked about some of my weird fetishes earlier, but in the previous one, but one of my weirdest sessions that I didn't mention before is that I have kind of like the female version of the cuckold fetish.
Okay. Yep.
Like I get turned on by the guy that I like having sex with other women, either in front of me or if I'm not there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Is that something you told, like, did you know that about yourself?
I did not know that about myself until I started dating him, and we were having a lot of threesomes, and I figured it out really quickly. So
what was his reaction when you told him?
I mean, what would any
I assume that he's like, oh yeah, I'm into that too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, who doesn't want to be able to like both have a girlfriend and sleep with any other girl? I think it's like ideal.
What was your limit as a submissive?
In personal life or at the dungeon?
Yeah, like the highest you ever, like, I mean, was there ever something you did that you scared yourself or that
yeah,
hurt
I
you?
would say lots of times. I'm trying to think if there was anything at the dungeon. I mean, I was not good at like saying no once something started.
Submissive. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something that really, I mean, like
so they choke. So okay, when they do the face slap, we talked about this a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like whenever like there's a video like they'll slap with the fingers only, kind of, right? Like like that.
Well, no, there was a guy that I like, a really sadistic client, and he was actually a really cool client and really fun, and everybody loved him. But at first I let him slap me so many times so hard that he actually bruised my face. So that was pretty extreme. But then he had to like kind of get a talking to, because he was doing things to a lot of girls, and like he was just a sadist, and he was very polite and not sexual at all. Yeah, he was just a sadist. He was just a nice sadist.
I said I was.
but he was just going too heavy on everybody and bruising everybody a lot, so they kind of had to talk to him like, hey, this is too much. So then he didn't do that anymore. But that was like, when I saw those bruises, I was like, wow, I'm letting this person go too hard. This is too much.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that was it.
Yeah. The abusiveness in BDSM, like, so what is how do you delineate between, being like, I mean, honestly, I joked about it earlier, but I sort of mean it. Like, in this day and age, if a dom's doing a thing with someone does it 5 times and they go like, I thought I was a submissive, but I hate this. It's so disrespectful. And then to have them come back and be like, you manipulated me, or you got me to do these things. Is there fear about that in the community, would you say? Or like, are people on guard about that?
That's an interesting question. I mean, not that I have encountered, because I think most people know what they like and aren't going to come back and say you manipulated me in that way. I definitely think that people might regret with it. I mean, there is kind of, it's almost, in some cases, I would say not so much at the dungeon, but maybe in private play parties or with a partner, if you're really submissive, like, and you're in a really submissive state, as we discussed earlier, it can be kind of similar to being high. So then there could be the question of, well, did you take advantage of somebody the same way you might if they were drunk? Right. So it could be an issue, but I think if it's a partner that you know and trust and have been with them for a long time, then that's probably not going to happen. But it could happen like at a play. I didn't go to a lot of play parties, but for a lot of people get off also on having an audience watching them. So when you add that element in, like maybe they're getting off on the fact that there's an audience and maybe there's a really good dom who's like beating them or whatever, and then maybe the dom we say, I mean, like whipping them or whatever.
Yep.
Whipping them or whatever, and then they're getting in that really submissive state, and then maybe the dom's like, oh, I'm gonna take this to the next level, I'm gonna take this person's underwear off, I'm gonna put a butt plug in them, I'm gonna do whatever, and the person is just in this totally submissive state and they've forgotten that there's people watching and they just do it, and then the next day they might think, like, I wish I hadn't done that. So that is like an iffy situation. And I guess you have to know that about yourself. If you're that submissive, you have to know that might happen. If you're you have to make a decision beforehand, or you have to talk to but if you're like a brand new submissive and there was no talk beforehand and a dom does that, I would say that's probably pretty irresponsible of the dom, but it's hard to say without knowing all the situation.
I mean, to me, I guess when I think of it as the way that I took drugs, the way you do everything, it's like you're escalating your tolerance, right? You're just constantly like seeing how far you can push it. So to me, it's completely like, really in a way, obviously it's each person's boundary is their boundary, right? But I guess what I would wonder is is there issues with that? Because I can see people from other generations going, where you go, he goes, get over there, you dummy, or what, talking, I don't know, just in those ways where you go like, no, that's not the trend now to be that harsh. Can you swear now? Like, call you stupid bitch? God damn it. Get down on the fucking floor.
Well,
bitch.
Definitely. Yeah. And I can think probably it's like we've had just this past year, I would say there's so much like re-exploring of gender and the way we talk about gender. And there's always been a tradition in BDSM of like humiliating someone in kind of a gender way, like calling a man like a sissy boy or a slut, and I can see how that might be getting
Sissy's
a little more,
right?
Yeah, like these words are we're questioning these words, so I can see how that might be getting to the point of where it's going to feel like something maybe we shouldn't do anymore. The same way we talk about like certain jokes that we used to make, like maybe we shouldn't do that make these types of jokes anymore, like jokes about rape or what have you, whatever they are. But another thing about BDSM though is it's always been about like taking the things that are considered wrong or weird or transgressive and then like making them sexualized and making them desirable. So there's still that element of it. So I can't see it dying out completely.
Yeah. I just think, hey, PC shit came into comedy and did a number. I say you guys are next. What? God damn it, Gabe. God damn it, CBD. Delta 8 from Super America. I've been perma-tripped. Let's see here. I was so on to something. Did you ever fall in love
at the dungeon
with a client? Yeah, or have something where you go like, I gotta get away from this dude or woman because
there was one who was just like really dominant and really hot, and I was like, oh, I wish he comes back. And I think he maybe came twice, and then he never came back. So there was that kind of thing. But I love he comes to the place that came. It'd be like for a promo thing, they should have a sign on the dungeon that says, if you were a client here, you would have already came by now. You can see by the freeway. I wrote that one about halfway through the show. Let's see. I got one. What is the biggest / or most unique body part you ever saw? Like everyone, anyone ever take off a shirt there was one,
and you see a nipple that's as big as a pancake? Or
there was one client who like didn't have a belly button. I don't know what had happened, but he didn't have a belly button.
I mean, that's why I ask questions like that. Okay. I mean, that really makes me feel good. What did you say anything? Did you say, oh, are you from another galaxy?
No. No.
How did were you born from a human?
we did comment because he would do doubles, so he would, or even triples sometimes. Like he would do sessions
your
with
lack of belly button.
multiple girls, so we would all see him. So we would comment afterwards, like he didn't have a belly button, right?
Did he have a nickname? I mean, that must have taken you 5 appointments
No, he
to
didn't
like
have
determine.
it. That one, he didn't have a nick. Well, I'm trying to think if he had a nickname. Well, I think we just called him where he was from, which was not very interesting. Like sometimes because we had a lot of people from out of town, so we would call them like Texas John or like Nevada George or whatever. But so no, it didn't have to do with his belly button.
What was the best client nickname you ever heard?
Well, the guy that I was
Fuckhead
talking about
Deluxe.
last time. Oh, are we totally out of time?
No. Keep going.
The guy that I was talking about last time, the one who did like the disturbing daddy-daughter role play.
Yep.
So we called him Daddy-Daughter Jeff, which is a pretty silly name to give somebody, Daddy-Daughter Jeff.
I mean, there's another tombstone, Tevin. We got a Daddy-Daughter Jeff. My fucking God. Yeah. Oh, this is a question I've been waiting to ask you, actually. So how many years out of this are you?
Well, so that has to do with like the end of the writing story too. So I actually had to leave the dungeon because of the Huffington Post article. I was naively hoping, and I did not use the real name of the dungeon. So technically it should have been kind of okay, but I was naively hoping that nobody would see it, like, cause they published so much content. I was like, whoa, I can just publish this article and it will help me get a literary agent or whatever, but nobody will really see it. But of course Boss saw it and she got really mad. So that happened in October of 2019. And of course, nobody knew what was coming. And if I had known what was coming, maybe I wouldn't have even published the article. So I had to leave the dungeon then. But I still had a couple clients like who I had gotten their information, who I saw privately, like all the way up till the pandemic started. And then when it started, I panicked and moved back to Baltimore, where I'm from, because I was nobody knew what was going on. And like being in an apartment building in Los Angeles just didn't seem like a good idea.
Yeah. Are you available for hire as a sub now? Like, I mean, if someone wanted to do that, are you open to that?
Yeah.
How would they get a hold of you? See, it's hard for you to say no.
Twitter.
Am I being coercive?
Private message on Twitter.
Okay.
I think Twitter. The Twitter it's SC_PARENT.
Thank you. So at Twitter, it's at SC_parent.
Parent. And then, but it would have to be like somebody local, probably.
Right. Do you want to say what area you're in or not?
I think I already said it, so it's too late to not. I said anyway, Baltimore.
Did you? Okay,
Baltimore,
she's
Maryland.
in Baltimore.
Yeah.
If you're horny and you're in Baltimore and you'd like an experienced submissive, please just pay her. I say $200
but
per half hour.
Yeah, and switching too, but like light switching. Like I don't have any toys, so I can't like. I'm not gonna cane somebody, but I could spank somebody.
I cannot get to this question to save my life, but I keep needing to ask it. So I guess, did we say how many years out then from it?
Oh, so that was my last day at the dungeon was October. I think it was October 4th, 2019. Okay. And then I was doing some small amount of stuff on the side up until March 2020. So 2 years.
So how has your, like, when you look back at when you were at the height of your subbing or whatever, you know, just when behavior got the most extreme, has that all died down because you're removed from that?
So the interesting thing is now I look back at it more fondly because like right when I was still at the dungeon at the end there, I was burnt out and bitter about a lot of things. So when I was writing about it, I was writing about it somewhat more negatively, like in the Huffington Post piece, although they also took out all of the positive things I said. But in general, I had more of kind of a negative outlook. And then since having so much time away from it, and then of course, the first year of the pandemic, everybody was so isolated and missing human contact. So now I look back at it more fondly, you know, and miss it and wish I could go back. But actually, coming full circle, the dungeon closed on December 4th of this year for good because they never fully reopened after COVID. Like they were only open for private appointments and it just wasn't really working. And they just decided it was time. So it's the end of an era. So I couldn't go back even if the boss would let me. So she would fire people and then let them come back later. So it could have been a possibility. But but yeah, so I look back at it more fondly, but I also, I don't think I'll ever have quite the same extreme. Some of them are extreme things that I was into or fantasies I had. Those kind of like something you have to get out of your system almost. And I don't think it would ever quite get to that level again.
Okay. So as you look at it now, you've been through it. If you had a child and they, went to that, I guess I'm sure we talked about this last week, but just answer it again. Yeah.
I mean,
how would you feel about
honestly,
that?
this is one of many reasons that I kind of don't want to have a child, because I'm like, how would I deal with that? Because I feel like if I did have a child, and if they were we're presuming a female child, I'm thinking, if they were anything like me, they would probably grow up to want to do something like this. Maybe not dungeon, but like some kind of like all out of the norm, socially unacceptable work. Cause like I always wanted to do, even before I knew about it, I always wanted to do something. So like, I feel like they would grow up to want to do something like that. And then I feel like to just say, no, you shouldn't do that. Just get your straight and narrow job and don't even try doing anything else. It's just this person is always going to have this feeling that they lost this part of themselves, or that they never expressed this part of themselves, so that they should try it. And in theory, that's all nice and good. But if it's your child, you're going to feel differently.
Yeah.
So it would be hard to like think what's best for my child as my child versus as a person. And could I stop them from doing this anyway? So all of that would be such a hard issue that one of many reasons I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to have a child anyway, because I don't know that I would be able to deal with that. But
you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it.
But yeah, I mean, if there are even thinking like a friend, like, if a friend were to do this, I would just be like, I hope you have better boundaries at the beginning than I did, because I wouldn't want people to go through all the stuff that I did. But at the same time, I'm happy I went through it.
Yeah.
And it could have been a lot worse. I was lucky to be in a dungeon where I had people protecting me.
So everything you're saying, I can correlate to drug use, right?
Yes.
And that it's like, you don't want your kid to take drugs. If he does it the right way, I don't really mind at all, right? But it's so scary that they give in to the bad, as you say, surrounded by the wrong people, all that kind of stuff. So would you equate it to like, look, it is a vice. It's not something, would you recommend every person to try BDSM?
I would say that's again going between like the safe, sane, consensual versus like the risk aware, as we were talking about earlier. I would say that for people who just want to try it for fun, or they just have like a couple of fetishes that they don't really have deep feelings of shame about, or any kind of, that it's not like a huge emotional thing for them, I think, anybody could try it. It's not going to hurt you. It's fun. It's fine. But if it is something that like you've had fantasies about since you were little, and it's deeply tied up within your identity, and if you feel any kind of shame over it, it's probably going to have more of a psychological impact on you. So you do have to be careful about the way that you approach it.
How do you avoid that? How do you avoid getting, I suppose, just having peers in the group or in the scene kind of?
Yeah. I mean, well, and for people who are more like, not like people who are doing it more publicly, going to a lot of play parties or things like that, they'll actually have kind of BDSM families, like family in quotation marks, where, there might be a dom who's really experienced, and then he'll have a bunch of people who he calls like his sisters and his brothers or whatever. And then the newer ones, or the ones who have been around longer, will kind of watch out for the younger, newer ones at a party, so, and you would probably be familiar with this person and know their limits. So if you see at a party that this person, you're like, okay, I know this person wants to be flogged or caned, but oh, look, now that person is like, looks like they're about to fuck them on the stage in front of everybody, and I don't think that person wants that, then they would intervene and stop the scene. So that kind of thing. So you would have to get your kind of support group going, and then
your community
and then also you would probably just have to become very aware of your limits and very good at stating them ahead of time. And then that's tricky too, because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you don't know something is right. You don't know it's a limit until it's been crossed and you didn't like it.
Kevin has 6 fish hooks in his penis right now.
So I mean, what it comes down to though is that as much as we like to think that we can protect ourselves from unhealthy experiences, sometimes we can't. Sometimes that's just what it is being human, and sometimes you kind of have to do that. it's part of being human. I mean, we all have, and I wouldn't even say that it makes it a vice. It's just part of being human. Like it's, you know, we hurt ourselves as much as we take care of ourselves. Like,
I don't think vice should be such a stigma word, by the way. Like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
because truly when I say it, it's like, yeah, you do some shit because it is naughty, because it is a little
yeah,
bad, you know, like
yeah,
that's not bad, you know,
yeah,
fucking
yeah.
boring if you don't.
It's human nature.
Yeah. What is the highest pain tolerance or pain threshold on a penis you've ever seen?
For a client who, well, I would say like the guy who had the wax in his asshole, that was pretty extreme.
Oh, really? You think that was the highest? I think that
I mean,
when
I
you
don't
said
know.
the high heel through the nutsack.
Yeah, see, since I don't have since I don't have balls for a cock,
yeah,
I don't know how much more that, like, because there were a lot of guys who like to be like kicked really hard in the balls or trampled really hard in the balls, but I don't know how much that hurts because I don't have
man.
So
I mean,
I don't
it don't
know.
feel good. That is like really.
There are also guys who like to have like really heavy weights attached to their balls and kind of walk around like that. So I imagine that would be a pretty extreme one.
What about the fishhook guys? Is that common in like
that,
like what you said?
Yeah, I mean, we would definitely not do that at the dungeon.
Mm-hmm.
Like we wouldn't do anything that broke flesh like that. That is one that I would never try in my life. Like I can barely even look at it just because
that's how I feel.
The needle stuff freaks me out. I've actually heard that it doesn't hurt though, like because you get really high really quickly and that it actually feels good. It's like kind of a euphoria.
It is so interesting. I mean, you know, I love that you say that you are looking back at it fondly, because I see too many things that we all do as young people, right? That in that moment you couldn't, you know, when I was a heroin addict, you couldn't tell me like, hey man, you're not doing well. I'd be like, well, I fucking love my life. And you know, like now I look back at it and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. But, you know, so I'm glad to see that you're not seeing it that way as well. You know, because that's a worry of mine with the sex community stuff. When we get swinger stuff, it always feels a little bit coercive, or like it has the potential to not be good. But then I also saw some of the best couples I ever saw too.
I think in some ways I'm kind of like, I don't know if there's a word for this, for somebody who just is glad that they experienced things. Like I want to use the word like sensationalist, but I don't think that's right. Like somebody who is glad they experienced things, whether they were good or bad. Now, when I'm really sad and lonely late at night and I'm crying and you ask me the same question, I might be like, I wish that had never happened. But you know, I guess it's like the cliche of like, it's better to have loved and lost than to have not. Like I think that it's better to have experienced things, and then it certainly gives me stuff to write about.
What's your like what turns you on today?
I mean,
like,
I'm still,
you know,
pretty,
are you more a sub in your head?
Yeah, I'm still pretty submissive. The difference these days being that I am more careful about who I do it with and more careful to establish boundaries right away. And I can be turned on by fantasy of being like a 24/7 submissive to somebody and just having that total power exchange, but I wouldn't want to do it in real life. But I could definitely be turned on by the fantasy of it. I'm trying to think if there's like anything specific that I still get turned on by the idea of somebody who's like so dominant that they can make you like something that you don't like. Like it's almost like training somebody to get turned on by something that they didn't like.
Yes.
That I don't know why that really turns me on.
Well, it is. I mean, I think that's, you know, I understand what you're saying is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like when I first met my boyfriend, I was more like I had always had fantasies about like being with a group of guys. Like I had wanted to have like threesome with two guys or something like that. And my boyfriend was just like, no, I'm not into that. No other guys, absolutely no other guys. But I really want to have threesomes or foursomes or whatever with other girls. And he like he trained me to think the same way. So now I like never have not fantasies about multiple guys. Like I only have fantasies about like multiple girls and one guy. And it was all because my ex-boyfriend like wanted it that way. And he made me want it that way too.
Is that the hottest thing that you ever did?
I think probably some of my hottest experiences were threesomes that we had. Because it can be really powerful to be dominated by two people,
Mhm.
because then you also get in there the whole, like, I think a lot of submissives have a bit of a humiliation fetish or an exhibitionist fetish where they want somebody to see them being submissive. So you get that part of it too when there's multiple people, and you're getting domed twice as much, and it's just like really powerful. And like in that, I've had like, being double penetrated and stuff like that. That was pretty hot. So probably that
by DP. You got my attention.
Yeah, DP.
Were you vagina and asshole, or two in vagina?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
The first, yes.
Okay. And so obviously that was a personal one.
Yeah, that was personal.
So, because I asked you the most extreme thing, and I don't think you said that.
At the dungeon?
No,
extreme thing.
Oh, you just talked dungeon, then we didn't get back to personal. So yeah, what is the most extreme thing you've done in a personal setting?
Well, that was probably the double penetration.
Yeah, I'm not asking for more. I'm just making sure. Is there because there was one thing you mentioned.
Actually, maybe not. Actually, I can think. I know we're getting really long, so we can't go into detail.
Yeah.
But when I first started working at the dungeon, I went to a party, like an Eyes Wide Shut type party, with a dom, and she had me get up on a table on all fours, and like there were a lot of people there. Most people were wearing masks. And she started like finger fucking me, and then she had a bunch of people come over and like spit on my butt and my pussy. So that was maybe the most extreme thing I've ever done.
Now, why would I like that? So you were on your hands and knees? I hate to ask more details.
Yeah.
Okay. So the lady standing behind you, finger fucking you, probably two fingers.
Yeah.
And then the person was spitting in your butt. Okay.
So she was just like asking other people to come over and spit on me.
And
like just other people who were at the party.
How many people would you say spit on you?
I would guess probably at least 10.
It's a lot of spit. And was there, I guess, how often was it that you'd feel, to me, it is complicated because I totally understand that pushing yourself and pushing as far as you can and through would be the biggest fantasy, right? But there also must be moments where you go, I'm on my hands and knees in a fucking commercial building getting people spitting on my ass.
Building. This was a party, so it was like somebody's house, somebody's apartment.
I just think
it was
of it as an industrial look. Yeah. Would you say that most of those parties were rich people? Or would that happen?
I didn't end up going to a lot of parties. But yeah, this was like a really private, wealthy Eyes Wide Shut. It was supposed to be like a real life Eyes Wide Shut type thing. So I think you had to buy tickets, and they were really expensive. I think somebody had bought a couple tickets for this Dom.
Is the vibe like friends. Actually positive around that, or does it feel deliberately staged?
This was kind of, this was not, I think this was something that they were trying to do to make money, and it felt forced, to be honest. Most of the people who were doing stuff were paid performers.
Right. Yeah. What, so I guess, is there anything that you think we're missing? Like any story that you have that I should have asked you about?
No.
I feel like we covered it. How about your writing? Let's kind of double back to that, where people can see it and all that. Because it is really good. I really enjoyed writing it.
Go on Twitter, because I have all the links on Twitter. So I have like the link to my website on Twitter and the link to my Patreon.
And we're going to put it on screen, and we'll have it linked in the comments of the show or in the description.
Yeah. So, and also my Twitter comes up right away if you Google me. So if you can't remember anything, that's always the easiest way. And then if you have a question for me, you can DM me. I'm not always great about checking the requests when people don't follow me, but I'll try to do it more after this, since I know people might do it. But if you're being a big creep about it, I can't promise I'm going to answer. So try not to be a big creep if you're going to do it. But I love to hear from people. So please DM me and let me know what you want to see, or what your questions are.
Should they default treat you as a sub if they come to your Patreon and DM you and stuff, or should they? No, just whatever?
I would say no. I'm not a sub as a writer. Like, it's separate.
Okay.
And yeah, if you want to try to, like, if you want to set up a session, that's different. But when my writer persona, my Twitter persona is just me as a writer. It's not me as a sub. It's me as a writer. And in fact, sometimes I don't really tweet much about the dungeon at all because I write other stuff too.
Yeah.
Especially being in, the COVID and quarantine for a while in there, I was writing a lot of stuff just to deal.
Yeah.
So I wrote a lot of poetry. I wrote an entire book of poetry. I don't know how good it is, but I did write one. And now I'm writing a bunch of horror short stories. I write all kinds of stuff. So.
Yeah. Her Patreon was just on, but it's patreon.com/Stephanie with an IE and then P. No underscore, no whatever, just Stephanie P. So please support her because it supports us. And we really appreciate you coming on the show. It's so fun to be able to just do firing line of perverted questions. I'm so gratified.
Yeah, it's fun to talk about it too. It makes me miss it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the show. Thanks for all the support. We're back. So, yeah, you can get this podcast anywhere you get podcasts, and check us out on Facebook and YouTube if you want to see the video of this. And we'll share kind of some of Stephanie's stuff and support her Patreon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.